G'day team. We're going to be going through the appendicular skeleton, and more specifically for this video, we're going to be going through the shoulder girdle or the pectorial girdle and the collarbone region, and the we'll stop there only because when we get into the upper arm, like the humerus, there's a lot of landmarks and stuff across the humerus that we're going to need to know. So we'll break it down into individual videos for each of those. So we'll do the shoulder girdle, which will involve the clavicle and the scapula, or the collarbone and the shoulder blade. And then we will go into the upper arm, which will go through the humerus, and then we'll make our way down to the wrist, and then into the lower limb. So here we have the pectorial girdle. So the pectorial girdle, also known as the shoulder girdle, consists of the scapula and clavicle, also known as our collarbone and our shoulder blade. It attaches the upper limbs to the axial skeleton. Remember, the axial skeleton being our rib cage and our spine, and it allows for maximum movement. Now, where it articulates with the axial skeleton is at the sternoclavicular joint. Now, if we break that word down, sterno meaning sternum, clavicular meaning clavicle, it is where the clavicular area, the clavicle, articulates with the sternum, the sternoclavicular joint, and it allows for maximum movement. Both bones provide attachment points for the muscles that move the upper limbs. Now, one thing I also want us to understand is that we have the acromioclavicular joint. Now, for some of us that have played sport, some of us might have either broken our collarbone or we have damaged our AC joint. Okay, and so what we can see here is where the shoulder blade, the scapula, articulates with the clavicle. That is called our acromioclavicular joint. Now, that area is called the acromioclavicular joint because we'll go through it in a second, but the landmark on top of the scapula, this area at the top, is called our acromion. And then obviously we have our clavicle, our acromioclavicular joint. Now, the acromial, or the lateral end, articulates with the scapula to make the AC joint. The sternal medial end of the sternum, or the sternoclavicular joint, is the one that we just talked about, where it connects to the sternum. They provide muscle attachments for numerous muscles. They act as braces to hold the scapula and arms out laterally away from the body. And that's why if we break our clavicle, often one of the tell signs that you have broken your collarbone is that the shoulder will collapse medially. So the shoulder, because of the break in the clavicle, it will drop down, the shoulder will drop down back into the body. Okay, and also remember that when our clavicle breaks, it's often because we are trying to protect the neck, and it is the body's way of making sure that we protect our spinal cord, which is important. So instead of breaking our neck and potentially providing damage across the board to more things, like maybe not being able to walk or breathe, what happens is that we're able to just, the collarbone will break, and that will allow for us to be able to heal one bone as opposed to trying to heal a lot of different things. Here we have the scapula, and what I want us to understand about the scapula is that there are a whole lot of landmarks, and these landmarks will be important for either attachment, articulation to other bones, or landmarks for origins of muscle attachment. So the landmarks that I want us to understand is the supraspinous and infraspinous fossae, the spine of the scapula, the acromion, the coracoid process, and the glenoid fossa. Okay, so what we have, and the glenoid fossa is at the top of the humerus, but obviously in terms of that shoulder joint, the glenoid fossa is important. So what we have is first we'll go through the top. We'll just start here. We'll make our way around, and then we'll go through the posterior. So remember, this is anterior. So this is what you'd see if you were looking like this. So you're looking through the ribs into the shoulder blade. That is the anterior view, and then posterior is if we were looking at it from the back. So with the anterior view, this is the outside, the acromion. Okay, we have the coracoid process, the glenoid cavity, the lateral border, medial border. Now again, lateral, again, tail signs that it's on the outside, medial is on the inside. We have our inferior angle. Okay, at the top we have our superior angle. Through the middle here, this big body through the middle is known as our subscapular fossa. We have our superior border and our suprascapular notch. Now, if we look at it from the back, we can see here, we'll start with the coracoid process. So the coracoid process, subscapular notch, superior angle, the supraspinous fossa, the spine. Okay, so there's a big, strong, thick ridge that runs down this through the middle. Our infraspinous fossa, our medial border, lateral angle, and our acromion. Right, and if we go back to the AC joint, the acromioclavicular joint, we can see here that this is where the scapula articulates with the clavicle. Okay, so just make sure we understand the landmarks for the scapula. Okay, and then also when we go into the humerus and down into the forearm, that we understand the landmarks of each of the bones, because they are important for either, like I said, articulation with other parts of the body to create joints, or they are important for attachments for the origin or insertion of muscle. Right, and in terms of movement, and especially if we're trying to work on shoulder strength and making sure that we decrease the chance of shoulder dislocation or collarbone breaking, or even maximizing our chest or our range of motion. It's good to be able to understand where the muscles begin and where they end, so that we know if we work this movement pattern, then we're going to be able to increase our range of motion, or increase our strength, or increase our stability in this area. All right, so being able to understand all the landmarks of all the bones makes it important for when we talk about muscle attachment or ligament and tendons, and so on. All right, so good stuff with that. This is the pectoral girdle, and inside the pectoral girdle or the shoulder girdle, we have that scapula and the clavicle, and that's what this video is all about. I'll chuck some questions up afterwards. Otherwise, look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, team.